This framework that I'm teaching you is a strategic framework, and it's not just about here's what you need to do to run your meeting. It's here's what you need to do to run your meeting in a way that gets you noticed as a high performer and a way that really has people seeing you as a highly capable leader. And this framework has 5 parts, and I call it my ROSES framework because the 5 parts follow the acronym ROSES. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jess. I am the host and creator of the Art of Speaking Up podcast, and I am a coach for women. I am here to help you build confidence, develop a super powerful communication style, and evolve into a leader in your corporate or 9-to-5 career. And today, we are talking about something that was a big part of my career when I was in the 9-to-5 space and is probably a big part of your career, and that is the topic of meetings. And in today's episode, I'm going to be teaching you a 5-part framework for running meetings in a very impressive way. And what I love about this framework is it's not just a tactical step-by-step to help you run a very effective, very focused, and productive meeting. But even more than that, it is a framework that is going to help you make a very powerful impression on your audience. Here's how I think about meetings, and here's how I think about this framework. When we're running a meeting, we are doing 2 things. The first thing we are doing is we're running the meeting. We're there to lead the meeting and get the results, but that's not all that we are doing. There's a second thing that we are doing, and that second thing that we are doing is we are developing our reputation. Because as we're leading that meeting, people are watching us. They're watching how we run the meeting. They're watching how we show up. They're watching how we lead. And the how of how you run your meeting is something that is going to help you develop a really powerful, really solid reputation at your company. So this framework that I'm teaching you is a strategic framework, and it's not just about here's what you need to do to run your meeting. It's here's what you need to do to run your meeting in a way that gets you noticed as a high performer and a way that really has people seeing you as a highly capable leader. And this framework has 5 parts, and I call it my ROSES framework because the 5 parts follow the acronym, and the acronym is ROSES. So what I'm going to be doing in this episode is I'm going to walk you through each part of the ROSES framework, so each of the 5 parts. And for each part, I'm going to explain not only why this helps your meeting go smoothly, but I'm also going to explain how it furthers your reputation and how it helps you make a very powerful, lasting impression on your audience. Because truly, the subtleties of the things that you say and what you do and how you interact with your stakeholders and audience, they make such a big difference in terms of how people perceive you. And I really want you to seize every opportunity that you have to present yourself as a strong, capable leader and have your audience, your boss, leaders at your company thinking of you as someone who is not just capable in your current role, but who is capable of handling more. So for each part of the 5-part framework, I will tell you what it does very tactically and what it helps you accomplish in the immediate, in the actual meeting. But I'm also going to talk about what it helps you accomplish more broadly from a macro perspective of solidifying your reputation. And lastly, I'm going to give you sample language for each part of the 5-part framework. So we are going to be working together on a fictional meeting. This is a fictional meeting about approving a marketing budget. And I'm going to show you an example of what you would say using each part of this framework. Because what I have found from coaching my clients and a lot of the work that I do in my group program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy, I have found that when you have an example of what the language sounds like, it helps you really internalize the concept. Okay, so let's get started with the first part of the ROSES framework, which is the letter R. So R stands for result. You want to start by letting your audience know what is the result that you brought them there to accomplish with you in that meeting. The reason that I chuckled when I said that is because I think we all know what it's like to be in a meeting where someone skips this very important step and you show up to the meeting and it's unclear what the meeting is. It's unclear why the meeting is scheduled. It's unclear where the meeting is going. And that can be very, very frustrating. So I don't want you to ever have that experience. I want you to create the opposite experience for your audience where they see you as being very focused and intentional, and they know exactly why you have brought them there. Which is why one of the first things that you want to share with them is the result that is being accomplished in that meeting. One way of thinking about this is that time is money, right? Like your company pays you and everyone who works there for their time, essentially. And so when we run a meeting, we are spending money. Like we are taking that time that is being paid for, and we are taking all of those leaders away from other things they could be working on. So we really want to signal to them that we are using their time and spending their time / the money that time costs in a very effective way. So here's sample language of what this could look like and how this could sound when you're running your next meeting. And then I'm going to talk about what it accomplishes in the meeting. So the sample language would be something like, today we are going to be approving the budget for our marketing campaign. Notice how this is clear, simple, to the point. I'm not beating around the bush. I'm making it very easy for everyone to understand exactly what I am wanting them to accomplish with me in the meeting, which is approving the budget for the marketing campaign. Now, there are two reasons that I want you to do this. There's the micro reason and the macro reason. So the micro reason is that for that meeting, you want everyone to be clear and focused and understand what is expected of them. When you start with the result, you will get a greater level of focus from your audience because they know what they're being asked to do. And also, you sharing the result creates a sense of urgency. It creates a feeling of we are here to do something. I am going to make sure that we do what we are here to do. You're basically just communicating to them that like you're not messing around. You are there to get something done. And when they feel that energy from you that you are there to get something done, they are going to stand up just a little bit straighter and be a little more focused because they're going to also then feel like, okay, the entire group is there to get something done. So that's the micro of why you start with the result. But the macro is that in terms of your reputation as a leader, what it shows is that you are someone who moves the needle. It displays a trait called bias to action, which means you are someone who tends towards taking action and moving the ball forward. That is a very, very good reputation to develop because ultimately it is the people who have the strongest reputation for just moving the ball forward, like showing up and getting things rolling. Those are the type of people that can really take on bigger, more complex projects and initiatives. And those are the type of people that make really great leaders. So you want to demonstrate through the language that you use and through the way that you run your meeting that you are one of those types of people. Okay, so that's the first part of the framework, R. The second part in the ROSES framework is the letter O. O stands for opportunity. Most people skip this. Do not skip this step. This is one of the most important steps. This is something that I spend a lot of time teaching my clients in the Art of Speaking Up Academy because it is so critical for your reputation as a leader. So after you've covered the result of the meeting, you want to talk about the broader business opportunity that specific result plugs into. You don't want to stay in the weeds and you don't want to stay at the level of like the very specific result that you are accomplishing in that meeting because that very specific result isn't as exciting and compelling as the bigger picture and the bigger vision. So O, opportunity, means you are reminding your audience of what is the bigger opportunity that we are all working towards as a business, that this particular result is going to help us accomplish. When you share this in your meeting at a micro level, like within the context of that specific meeting, what's going to happen is your audience is going to feel more emotionally engaged, especially if they are an executive audience. An executive audience is not going to be super emotionally engaged by tactics and details. Unless they're like someone who's super operational and loves that stuff. In general, leaders and executives are going to be emotionally engaged by signs and signals that show them that they're moving closer to their big goals and their high-level KPIs for the business. So when you kick off your meeting and you talk about that specific result that you're creating in that meeting, that result is not nearly as exciting and compelling to them as the bigger vision that result is helping to accomplish. And it is your job as the leader, as the person leading the meeting, as the person leading the initiative, to show them that connection and to show them, hey, this meeting isn't just about approving our marketing budget. This is about something far bigger and far more exciting. So opportunity is where we present that business opportunity so that our audience is compelled and excited and emotionally engaged. So here's some sample language when it comes to O, opportunity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap R before I get into O so you can see it all flowing together. So R, result. Today, we're going to be approving the budget for our marketing campaign. Then we pivot into O, opportunity. As you know, this marketing campaign is going to build awareness for our newest product release and ultimately going to help us grow our customer base and our revenue. So you can see there in that example that I am painting a picture of the opportunity. This is not just about a marketing campaign budget. This is about revenue. This is about the things that get leaders and executives excited about the work that you're doing. Now, I mentioned on a micro level, the O in roses is all about inspiring them to listen, but we really need to step back and talk about what the O, opportunity in the roses framework, accomplishes at a macro level. At a macro level, when you are speaking to your audience about the bigger business opportunity, they're going to see you as a bigger picture thinker. They're going to see you not just as someone who is working on a marketing budget. They're going to see you as someone who is making an impact on and thinking deeply about the broader, higher level goals that exist within the business. This is one of the best things that you can have leaders and executives thinking about you, is that you are moving the needle in a bigger, broader way. It helps them see you as more important within the organization simply because you are painting that connection for them. This part of the framework is so important. That's why I spend quite a bit of time diving into it with my clients in the Art of Speaking Up Academy, because it is one of the key things that elevates the quality of your communication from an individual contributor level to a leadership and executive level. So that's the O, opportunity. Before we get into the S part of the Roses framework, I wanted to let you know about a free resource that I created called Speak Like a CEO. This is a free 3-part video course designed to teach you some simple, fundamental executive communication skills that are going to help you speak in a way that is polished, crisp, and super impressive. You will find this course inside my free resource library. To get your hands on this course, as well as all of the resources that are inside my free resource library, just click the link in the show notes or head to jessguzikcoaching.com/free resources and click the button that signs you up for the free resource library. I think you're going to love it. And now back to the episode. Let's get into the S of the Roses framework. Now we are moving into the S of the Roses framework, which stands for structure. So structure is where you lay out for your audience how you will be structuring that meeting. You want to be clear and prescriptive about how you are dividing up the time and what are the macro steps that you are going to guide them through during that meeting. Now, in the micro, what structure does is it helps your audience focus because they know what's coming ahead. They have a feeling that they can follow along. And they also know at what point in the meeting they're going to be asked to interact or to approve something. So they kind of like know where they're on the hook, which means that they need to actually focus and listen to what you're saying. But on a macro level, what it shows when you share structure with your audience before you dive into the contents of the meeting, it shows that you are thoughtful, it shows that you are intentional, and most importantly, a lot of people overlook this, but when we use structure, it automatically positions us as an authority in the minds of our audience. There is something about structure that signals to our audience that we have it together. We get it. We understand it. We know how it works. And I believe this is partly because when we share something in a structured way, it requires us to have a deeper grasp on what we are sharing. When we understand something deeply, we can lay it out in a clear step-by-step structure. So structure communicates to our audience that we get it. We know what we're doing. We are there to move them through a process and they can trust us. When you use structure, your audience will have deeper trust in you because what you're showing them is, listen, I've planned out this entire meeting. I've thought about it. I know exactly where we're going and where we're headed. Then they can lean back and trust you to guide them step by step. And when leaders and executives trust you to guide them step by step, that is incredibly powerful for your reputation and for what you can accomplish in the room. Okay, so I want to share the sample language for S, structure. And I'm going to recap R and O before sharing S because I do want you to experience how these parts flow together. So R, result. Today, we're going to be approving the budget for our marketing campaign. O, opportunity. As you know, this marketing campaign is going to build awareness for our newest product release and ultimately help us grow our customer base and revenue. S, structure. I'll walk you through 3 things today. First, I'll share the goals we were solving for when creating the budget. Then I'll walk you through the budget and the numbers. And lastly, I'll answer any questions you have. And as a group, we'll make a go, no-go decision. Okay, so that's ROS, result, opportunity, structure. Now we get to the E in the ROSES framework, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it's pretty straightforward, but E stands for everything. So now that you've laid out the structure, you're going to cover everything that you laid out in the structure. So this is where you actually get into the core of your meeting. And if you've laid out the structure properly, and if you've applied the S part of the framework properly, then you have a roadmap for what goes in E. The structure that you laid out in S is going to comprise the agenda for the meeting, and that is what you are going to spend the bulk of your time addressing. Okay. Now we get to the last part of the ROSES framework, which is the second S. So there are 2 S's in ROSES, and the second S stands for synthesis. Now, if you prefer the word summary, you can plug in the word summary, but I prefer the word synthesis. When I hear the word synthesis, it sounds like a fancy word, and it makes me want to work harder to do a really good job and to be really crisp and impressive. So I love the word synthesis because it motivates me. So the last part of the ROSES framework is S, synthesis. This is where you want to talk about what was accomplished in the meeting. This is very important, and I'm going to talk about why in just a second. And you also want to talk about what is happening next. Now, talking about what was accomplished in the meeting might seem redundant. You might think like it doesn't make sense for me to talk about what just happened in the meeting because it just happened and we all just sat through it and watched it. However, there is something that I work with my clients on called narrative building. And we want to share that summary of what happened so that we can do some narrative building for our own reputation. So narrative building just means that you are taking control of the narrative around you and your work and your reputation. So an example of narrative building could be coming to a feedback conversation with your manager, and instead of only listening to them share feedback on what you've accomplished, you can come with your own narrative on what you have accomplished. This helps you control the narrative. This helps you take the narrative and take your professional reputation into your own hands. So whenever you can be the one to paint the story and paint the narrative about you and your work and what you are accomplishing, you want to seize that opportunity, because when you're the one who's painting the narrative, you can paint a really good narrative about yourself that helps you get ahead in your company. And I know it can sound almost really obvious, but I think a pattern that we fall into a lot is this trap of I want to do really good work, and then I want people around me to recognize it and to validate me. And I want them to give me the narrative about why I'm amazing. We want other people to give us the narrative about our own work because that validates us and that makes us feel confident. And that's a totally normal and human thing. But the problem is when you're in a corporation, you're in a political environment, right? You're in an environment where people are trying to show the best of themselves. And in some ways, people are competing for success and for those coveted leadership positions. And so if you're only relying on people outside of you to create the narrative about you and how well you're doing, you're just missing out on a huge opportunity to proactively build and strengthen the narrative that is going to get you promoted and help you attain success and hopefully move into a leadership position. So when you get to the end of your meeting, you have a beautiful opportunity for narrative building. You're building the narrative of what you as a leader in your organization are able to accomplish when you get a room full of people together. You are reinforcing the fact that you get things done. This is why it is so important for you to recap what has been accomplished in the meeting. You are literally reminding people of the value that you created, which ensures that you will get maximum credit for it. As you might be able to hear, I feel really, really, really passionately about this because so many of my clients are they're wonderful humans and they tend to be very humble. And I think humility is a great quality. And I think as women, we have to practice owning the value that we are creating, not being shy about it. We have to talk about it. We have to emphasize it. We have to repeat it, even when it feels like we're taking up a lot of space, even when it might annoy people. We can't let those things get in the way of the goals and dreams that we have for our careers. So when you get to the end of the meeting, you want to recap what you accomplished and what value was created in that meeting. And then you want to talk about what the next step will be. So you might be thinking that this step sounds really scary and it sounds like you have to all of a sudden brag about what you've accomplished in the meeting. And that is not true. I am quite good at finessing and massaging these things to make them subtle yet potent. So I want to share with you the sample language for S, summary, where you summarize the value that you created and where you share the next steps and the one thing that's going to happen next. So here's the sample language for that. The sample language would be something like, thank you for your time, everyone. So as a recap, we've looked at the budget, we are all greenlit, and now my team is going to get started on planning the campaign. You're going to hear from us 2 weeks from now when we bring this group back together to approve the messaging and overall strategy for the marketing campaign. So as you'll see, the place where I'm controlling the narrative and where I am summarizing the value that was created in the meeting isn't this big showboaty thing where I'm like, look at me, everyone, look at how amazing I am. Although I would definitely still encourage you to do things like that. But I just want you to see how it can be subtle, right? All I said is we've looked at the budget and we're all green lit. On a subtle level, what this is reinforcing with my audience is, hey, everyone, when I brought you here to this meeting, I shared the result that I was going to accomplish. And look, I made sure we accomplished it. So you're closing the loop. So you can think of the ROSES framework as being like a loop where you open it with R, result, right? And now you're opening the loop of like, okay, here's the result that we're creating. And then when you get to S, summary, you're closing the loop and you're being like, hey, everyone, look, we created the result that I said we were going to create in this meeting. And again, the reason that this is important is because that is building into the narrative that you are someone who creates results. So to recap, the ROSES framework is a tool that you will use not just to run effective, productive meetings, but to solidify your reputation as a leader and as someone who is moving the needle for your company. There are 5 parts to the ROSES framework. They are R, result. What is the result you are there to accomplish in the meeting? O, opportunity. What is the bigger business opportunity that result plugs into? S, structure. How are you going to structure and guide your audience through the meeting? E, everything. That's everything that actually happens in the meeting, and it should follow the structure you laid out in the first S. And finally, the second S, summary. What was accomplished in the meeting and what are the next steps? Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you give this framework a try, please reach out and let me know how it goes. I will put my contact information in the show notes. And if there's someone on your team or maybe at your company who you think would benefit from learning this information and being exposed to this framework, go ahead and share this episode with them. It really helps me when you share the show. And I so appreciate those of you who have spread the word. Thank you so, so much. That is the primary way that this show has been discovered, is just by you sharing it and recommending it to people you know. So thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in next week's episode. Bye.